Pleasure to welcome you today to this event. My name is Marta Pastuch and I represent German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. The platform is a German government initiative and it is aimed at actors from non-governmental organizations and agencies based here in Germany, which want to participate in the reconstruction in Ukraine and are looking for more information, exchange, and contacts. We do organize many events in different spheres, in different topics, and I personally am responsible for all events, activities in the platform which are dealing or which are for the reconstruction in Ukraine or on municipal level. And today we will speak about reuse of demolished materials, which challenges there are, and maybe what opportunities do we have there. I'm delighted to introduce our moderator today, Anna Ackermann, policy analyst in Green Reconstruction of Ukraine, International Institute for Sustainable Development, and also representative of the Build Ukraine Back Better platform. We do have today two speakers who are really experienced in this topic. There are Olena Koltek, head of Ukraine support team, co-founder of Rethink, and Bart Great, project director of Neo Action. I'm looking forward to the lively discussion. Anna, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marta, and good afternoon, everyone. Just a few technical words how we will be discussing today. So we have, you can actually see the agenda already on the screens. Well, we first will have the short intro and a little bit interactive too. You will see, then we'll discuss with our experts, and that would last for approximately 1 hour. You of course would like to make sure that we keep the the space and we keep the flexibility to make sure we answer all of your questions that you have today. Don't hesitate to be adding them throughout the speeches, the presentations, the conversations, and whatever is left, we of course also would like to make sure that you do receive the answers. Hopefully we'll also have time for networking, and that would mean that we will also split by the end into small groups. We don't want to leave you, just with a kind of theory, but make sure that you meet each other and perhaps, see what could be the ideas for future cooperation. Also the short intro that you might have heard of or not, but it relates to the issues we'll be discussing today. We know that the Russian invasion of Ukraine caused not only significant human suffering, and this is continuing, of course, but it also led to the massive increase in construction and demolition waste. And because of the bombing of Ukrainian cities and infrastructure, we are talking now about tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of tons of debris in different regions of Ukraine. So of course, from Kyiv to Zhytomyr to Chernihiv to also eastern and southern regions. So today we'll be discussing about how the reuse of the demolition materials can contribute to the reconstruction in Ukraine that is more sustainable and resource efficient. And we have excellent experts today with us as speakers, but I'm also quite sure that some of you are there as participants in the room. Just a small note, today we'll be discussing in English. And although everybody, is probably free to understand and hear, but please make sure if you use any abbreviation, please explain what they mean to make sure that we are all kind of on the same note, because again, there is specific definitions for every single topic that we're discussing. So let's make sure we remember about this. And before we are moving to the discussion, first of all, what we'll be discussing today is, of course, the current situation in Ukraine in relation to our main topic, the state of reconstruction, the debris disposal, what are the challenges and needs, environmental and health risks, associated with the use of debris. Also, lessons from the EU policies, which EU policies are applicable in Ukraine already today, and perhaps vice versa. What kind of Ukrainian experience could be applicable in the EU? What are the strategies, regulations that are important, and of course, again, by the end, we'll be talking hopefully a lot about opportunities for cooperation. Now, I would like you to think a little bit and just to share with us what you think are what do you think is the current situation in Ukraine in relation to the debris and the use of the waste. I would like the team to share the screen if possible. So some of you probably already used the tool called Menti. If you could scan this QR code with your phone, or go to menti.com and enter the PIN that you see on the screen, and then you will be asked to answer 3 questions. One of them is, well, you actually will see them one by one, but I will still mention them straight away. You don't need to necessarily, have a right response. It's just to understand how this group and how this audience sees the topic and the current situation. So while you're scanning, we disappeared. Now, please check the chat too. There is the website, and you can enter the PIN. So the first question, now the colleagues are opening it, is the following. In your opinion, which sector has suffered the most from the war? We will wait a little bit. We have 76 people now in the room, so we'll wait a bit till you answer this question. I can already see that there is agriculture, buildings, energy, transport, buildings and energy. Armon, for now, the top guesses. Do use the, we'll wait for still a little bit till more people answer the question. So for now, in any case, we can see that there is buildings and energy, which, according to our audience, have suffered the most. If you're wondering where to actually check this information and where to find it, how the sector split and the damages by sector, you can find it in the so-called RDNA, the damage assessment, which is carried out by the World Bank and the government of Ukraine with support of the European Union, and it clearly shows that the most damaged sector from the war is building sector. And we are talking about more than 200,000 buildings which were damaged or destroyed by the war. And so if you look at the wider picture of the infrastructure damaged, and so we are talking about the direct damages, definitely the building sector is the one that has most of damages, and also we are talking about tens of thousands of billions which are needed to rebuild Ukraine. I guess we can be moving now to the next question. So this question is the following. What, in your opinion, what is the estimate of the cost when we talk about dealing with the waste from the destruction? So here we even give you the range between $1 billion to $25 billion. And of course, the waste from the destruction also comes from different sectors, not only from building sector, which we just mentioned before. And we have now the graph that is shaping up a bit. But not many of you think it's only 1 billion, seemingly. So indeed, as is on the graph, it's somewhere in the middle. So we are talking about approximately $15 billion. According to the same assessment that I was mentioning, I will share the link in the chat that is called RDNA assessment by the World Bank and the government of Ukraine. So we're talking about 13 to 15 billion US dollars to deal with the waste. And then the last question, which is more not right or wrong or anything, but to just hear from you, what do you think are the biggest challenges, or if you could name one biggest challenge in managing demolition waste in Ukraine? So you can type in anything, and then we will hear from experts what do they think is the biggest challenge, because it's them who are dealing with these on the daily basis. Regulations, cooperation. So what are the biggest challenges you think? Sorting, the war that is ongoing, local authorities, transport. So there's quite a few times people mentioned regulation. Sorting appears to be one of the issues that is mentioned the most. The waste ownership. We can see people are here who know something about the topic for sure. Technologies, cost is a good question we'll be discussing for sure. Right. That's a nice graph. So let's take a note of that. Pollution, technologies, regulations, landfilling, recycling facilities, methods, technologies, and so on. Right. Thank you so much for this. And based on this, well, I'm moving now to hear from our experts. So we are starting with Olena Koltik, who is the head of Ukraine support team and the co-founder of Rethink, organizations which are dealing with this exact issue that we are working on today. Olena, well, if you could tell us a little bit, of course, about your work. And you saw now, the graph, what people think are the largest challenges. But if you could perhaps start up with a larger context of what is the issue looking like, what are the current legislation and main gaps, in what kind of environment you're working in. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to start from a little correction to all of us understand the level of problem in Ukraine with this debris. In this investigation of World Bank, 11 to 15 billions of dollars, it's mean amount of money that we need only for dismantling of the buildings. It doesn't count the process of treatment of the waste or landfilling or using it like a secondary materials. So the amount of money that we will need to solve our problems is much more bigger. And actually, to begin, a little introduction about me and my team, if I may ask organizer to put on our presentation. We are a coalition of non-governmental organizations that from the beginning of the war trying to help in different way with the communities affected by the war. But as a coalition, our main deal is to build or develop some effective systems that help communities and donors to allocate their resources more effectively. So, and one of the things that we work with is debris management and next one slide, please. And we are trying to work in different level with different stakeholders, beginning with communication with the ministry of environmental protection, with regional development, because actually they both could regulate this sphere in different section. We are trying to see and to understand the current problem on the field. We communicated with local authorities, especially affected by the war, some Kharkiv community, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Kyiv region, and actually to bring some understanding of gaps and decision to organize the system effectively in Ukraine, because it's the third years of war and we still do not have effective and high quality result of recycling these materials in Ukraine. And I will tell you a little bit the obstacles that we have right now in Ukraine, and trying to solve and to understand the system. So the next one. Slide, please. The next one. Yes, it's a little illustration, because I see a lot of international auditory here right now, and actually who do not know me very well, do not be afraid. I'm very sincere and direct person, so I do not want to determine from work in Ukraine or to work in this field, but still we have a lot of challenges to solve to bring a really effective solution in the end. The next one. And when we, a lot of you could read or heard the official amount of volume of the waste in Ukraine. It's from 6,100 till 700,000 tons. But actually, when we started to work with the communities, we understand that actually these amounts of waste are very general. So they are usually counting only the waste that they are taken from destruction site to temporary site, and they usually count it very generally how many cars they use to bring this waste, etc. And when we try to develop some mechanism to work with this waste, we realize they do not reporting to the ministries about the buildings that still are waiting for dismounting. So this amount of waste that you see on screen, it's only about the waste they already moved to the temporary site. But we are not talking about almost just the destroyed cities that staying, this building staying on the site and waiting for their dismelting. The next one. Oh, it's like general question. It's hard to manage when you're not moving your presentation by own. So we could understand that a real amount of the waste, it's much more bigger. I think even not in twice, in 3 or 4 times. And actually with our expert and scientists, we develop a methodology for counting of the waste to bring some solution to communities to at least to do the quality of numbers that they use more strict to reality. And we really believe that if we want to solve the problem, we could count it. And till the time we couldn't arrange the numbers of how many of this waste we have in Ukraine, there will be no effective solution in the end, because we need to plan some equipment, we need to plan some works, some expenses of the country, of the business to solve this problem. And that's why we need to have more or less real result. And I will bring you quickly through our methodology, just to you or any who will be interested to know about this instrument. Please, next slide. So we take Japanese experience, Japanese methodology, and editing it due to Ukrainian reality, types of buildings, and actually amount of waste that we have already. So in the end, we have a methodology that introduce coefficient, different coefficients that you could use to count amount of different type of waste in different type of buildings. So on the screen, you see, for example, a table of a coefficient for 5-floor brick multiply apartment buildings. So actually it's very easy to use and to have like at least understanding approximate amount of the waste that you will have in the end. The next one. I will show you in examples how it works because I'm trying to bring the information very quickly. So there is an easy formula where you're taking like total to count the total amount of the waste debris from the building. You're taking total destruction area of the house and multiplied on coefficient from the tables. Please, next slide. I will show you on an example, it will be the best. So we took a building in Kharkiv that was built due to standard building project. So it's the same in a different region, and even in the Kharkiv, they have the same projects. So it was building 6-floor large panel apartment with 111 apartments inside. Building foot area due to the project documentation was 615, and a total floor area, it means like you take in this footprint area and multiply it on the amount of floors. So it was 5 and 8,000 of square meters. But the only one section of the building was ruined. So to count how many waste you have in the end, you take in only area of the destruction area. And it was 9,000 square meter. And in the end, we can see how much it's not translated tons, it's tons in the end in the table. So you can see approximately how much of different kind of waste you will have in the end. I really believe that it could try to plan the budget of communities and the business to work with such project. It could plan to understand how many recycled materials you could have in the end. Because the next slide. It's like easy way to do it. We introduce also online calculator when you very easy come and like bring your numbers and have in the end. Do not play with this coefficient, and the calculator will give you the amount of waste in the end. The next one. So why I think it's really needed? Because we already have some players in Ukraine. You may see on the photo a big recycling station that is already in Kyiv region and provided by equipment from JICA. Or by JICA, it's more correctly, and the volume of this equipment is very big. But actually, to have in the end not like just materials that we will backfilling roads, holes of the roads. Actually, we need to have a control of quality of these materials, and to understand what we will have in the end and what amount of these secondary materials we will have in the end. So on the photo, you may see, for example, our Norway partners from Scientific Institute SINTEF try to on pH analyze if the concrete on Borodyanka side is good. And it shows that it's good enough to use it like a secondary materials. And on the photo under it, it's like a JICA recycle station for Kyiv region, and already a lot of other destroyed region have also the same equipment already in the region. For example, as I know, it's Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Dnipro have the same equipment. So it's very volume equipment that could really have in the end of this proceeding process good recycled materials that we could use in the building materials. And the next one, and then I will switch to like legal sphere. What I want to show you also a good example, a key region. On the left side, it was Bucha temporary site that they bring all the waste from Bucha on it. And right now, I did not, unfortunately, I did not have photo. It's fully empty. So they recycle or like sorting everything in all this mixed waste. And on the right, it is smaller equipment that they also have on their sides. And this is good case that even like various mixed waste could be taken from a temporary site and like dealing with it. But actually, let's switch to the legal framework because it's very important to understand and to work in Ukrainian sector, and there are still a lot to develop on it. We have a basic regulation. It's a resolution. We could switch off the presentation. I go through it quickly. So we have a basic regulation on debris in Ukraine. It's resolution 1073. And actually, why I'm calling it basic? Because when the Russian army was pushed out of Chernihiv and Kiev region, we was really faced with devastating destruction, and it was first time that we seriously started to think what to do with these enormous volumes of debris left behind. And at the time, I was head of waste management department in the Ministry of Environmental Protection, and with colleagues from current Ministry of Regional Development or like infrastructure. I don't know how is it correctly named right now because they're changing every month their name. So we developed this basic resolution 1073, which generally regulate the debris management in Ukraine. And on one hand, we needed to stop harmful practice like dumping the debris around the roadside, lakes, and rivers. On the other side, we have we needed in that time to create a really fast track procedure for locating land plots for temporary site, at least for temporary site for this waste management, and enabling to a local community to act quickly because they do not have time. They need to come back to their lives, and they really in all projects that we work with communities, they really need very quick decision. And in normal condition, why it's important? Because in normal condition, where we work with waste management project, we will need to have environmental impact assessment. We will need to have some permits, multiply approvals. So in this, by this resolution, we simplify the steps to work with this waste on temporary sites. So to open a temporary site, community do not need this environmental impact assessment. They do not need permits. They could work without permits on waste on this temporary site. But actually, this is the third years of war, and we are a little bit forget that only on this side, only people that approved by or stakeholders that approved by this resolution could work with permits and approvals, because any other stakeholders, business, etc., or if you work on other plots and temporary site due to resolution of cabinet of the minister, you should have environmental documentation on your works and on your land. So it is very important because we are a little bit forget about that, and I saw a lot of the projects that do not do all documentations that they need due to environmental rules of Ukraine. One more things to understand about Ukraine and
sorry for interrupting. If you could maybe say in a few more, just 1-2 minutes maximum. Yeah, the current main challenges, you just started talking about them, right? So it's about this, and perhaps also mention in a few words. I'm sure people would be curious about the hazardous waste standards that currently are there, and this issue too. Yeah, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, okay. I will try to be short. So what we need to know: debris and C&D waste, a different stream of waste in Ukraine. We wisely separated it because debris contains a large of construction and demolishing waste, but still it usually mixes with household waste, with hazardous as mentioned, and that's why we need different approach to work with this waste than you could plan when you're working with C&D, for example, because C&D it's planning works, and waste management usual debris is like disaster of Ukraine, and we need to have some special condition to work with this team of waste. It's provide typical list of ways that could be found in the resolution. I mean, provide typical kind of typical waste that you could find in these debris, and possible ways of handling them accordingly to the waste hierarchy. But still, it's very general, and we need to right now to Ukraine to start to develop it deeply, and to have some really regulation that describe in details in standard how to we need to work with that. Actually, on my opinion, the problem with debris should become a driver for developing proper regulation on C&D waste in Ukraine, because actually we only starting in 2022. C&D, it's construction and demolishing waste. It's usual kind of waste that very simple to debris that we could find in Europe, European regulation, but it's not the same. Still, it's not the same, but we could take some good examples to managing this waste from C&D. But actually, Ukraine moved from Soviet Union standards and some regulation in waste management only in June of 2022. And right now we are on transition stage to move to European standards due to framework waste directive, European Waste Directive 98. And so to have the result of this proceeding waste debris in Ukraine, actually, we need to have a clear procedure for processing this waste to produce high quality secondary raw materials. Because right now they usually just crushing the bricks, crushing the concrete, and in the end there are no control on quality of production, and actually the producer of construction materials couldn't work with this material. Also,
if we could wrap up in a few minutes. Sorry, in a few minutes, in a few half a minute.
Yeah, I'm just conclusion a few points that what we need to develop more. Actually, what you mentioned about hazardous, we still need to set strict requirements for control over sorting and removal hazards from material construction, because we usually talking about asbestos. I'm for sure that this time will rise today, but actually in debris there's a lot of other hazards that we need to handle, and actually to have the materials to have possibility to use these materials in the end, we need to have some laboratory on the site that will check every hour the quality of the materials that they have on the station. Right now, as I know, they have a small some pilot projects that use this laboratory to check the quality, but they're not like a regulation frame. What do you need step by step, or some roadmap? How do you need to what do you need to do to have in the end the quality secondary materials that could be sent to the market? And actually what is the most important, and actually here we will welcome all international actors that are interested in this team, it's engage with the construction market, because Ukrainian traditional construction market are very careful with this team. Virgin Ukrainian materials that we could virgin Ukrainian materials, aggregates, sand, etc. Usually are much more cheaper than in the European market, and this is the main problem why this sphere are not working in Ukraine. And this interaction is very important as for me, because only if we will have buyer from business of construction market in the end, then we'll be interested to control the quality of these materials, to bring normal procedure of recycling of these materials, etc. Because otherwise we will not have imagination whom to sell these secondary materials, or where it use, maybe not selling, but to use in building materials. There will be no interest to bring some quality and some control on the site.
Thank you so much.
A lot to say,
and that's
quite briefly, but still.
Absolutely, there is challenges exactly in the actually for Q&A, and I'm afraid, but it's great. Not afraid. The questions are more and more in the chat already. If you feel like you can actually even answer a few, some of them are very technical, but of course we will raise them in the teeny as as many of them as possible, because there's already at least 6, I think, while we were discussing. You mentioned, of course, the economic model of recycling in Ukraine. I think it's a very important question, and I can imagine our next speaker would talk quite much about it too. And the current state of regulations, and that EU is moving toward the EU standards too at the moment. So this is also a whole challenging path in the way ahead. And with this, I would like to give the floor to Bart Griert, who is the project director at NeoEco. NeoEco, who already has also quite some experience, not only in Ukraine, but also internationally, on debris management after disasters and so on, plus the EU experience. So if you could tell us a little bit more, because you already have done quite a few projects in Ukraine since 22, and if you could address this topic of the economic model, methodology you use, and we are also very interested to get your feeling about perhaps the difference that you see between the standards that exist on construction waste management, demolition in EU. You know a bit about Germany too, in Ukraine. So what are these differences? So the floor is yours. And maybe just before you start talking, just one word that Bart would unfortunately have to run soon. And his colleague Mathieu Morival, who also has a very big experience in the sector, would join us in a few minutes and could talk also about this. So Bart, please.
Thanks a lot, Anna. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Short introduction is NeoEco is historically a French company. We do about 300 construction and demolition waste projects per year. We have done the Olympic Games in Paris, which was, of course, a nice event for us. What we are doing, in fact, is circular economy. So we give a second life to material, used material. So the word waste, we don't really like to use. If you use the word waste within the company, you have to offer a glass of beer or wine. So I hope this is not the case today. We moved into Ukraine in May 2022, so rather quickly after the large-scale invasion. We have currently 3 offices in Ukraine, one in Kiev, one in Kryvyi Rih, and one in Mykolaiv. And we started straight away with a project in Hostomel where we used a bombed site where we cleaned up the debris waste. I would say the numbers of Olena is a little bit general number, which means that you can extrapolate that the majority of the waste is concrete and bricks. So a lot of people are asking that question, but it's the primarily material. We have done so far about 500,000 tons of debris cleaning, so rather large scale so far in Kiev region and Mykolaiv region. We on the first project we were able to reuse or recycle around 92%, and the later projects we can go to 97%. I think what is important to mention is that these are activities of 22-23. In 2025 we did not continue the activity, so that might come to surprise, but there is a shift where we believed in 22-23 that private sector would play a role in debris waste management. And of course, different donors, JICA included, gave the equipment to municipal companies or regional authorities. So currently it's out of the hands of private sector, and it moved back to the public sector. We have to accept that. We also, I think what is worth mentioning, there was a Norman Foster competition for the Saltivka reconstruction in Kharkiv, where we were able to really focus there on the reuse and the recycling of the debris that is available there. And together with Gensler and Kundal, 2 architect firms, we won that competition. If possible, I would like to share the screen. I don't know, Marta or Roman, if you could bring it up. Before talking about debris waste, I think it's very important to mention that currently, in our opinion, there are 2 different types of debris waste. The one that is sorted on site, which is the way that we processed the 500,000 tons in Ukraine. And then, like Olena mentioned, the debris that is brought to a central site, temporary storage or a landfill, where the waste is mixed. And what is the big difference is that when we go for the methodology that we deployed in Ukraine so far, in fact, what you do in what we call phase deconstruction, you try to scalp the building, primarily the roof, which is often asbestos, the famous schiefer plates. And you try to scalp also, for example, if you see that there are polystyrene facade insulation that was brought on later on the building. And I think it's very important because once you start just crushing the material, in fact, you start to multiply the pollutants to a larger scale. And to the cost, which was one of the questions of Anna. Just to give you a rough number, when we use this methodology on top of the deconstruction, which you have to do anyway, we can operate to an effective cost of 3 to 4 euros per ton to do this, what I would call phased deconstruction and further processing. When you do the mixing, so it means you don't do the phased deconstruction, you just deconstruct the building and then you crush and screen it, then you operate at 50 to 60 euros per ton. So there is a huge difference between phased deconstruction and just deconstruction, brutally mix it and then bring it on site. And I would say if the audience can remember that point, I think that would be already a big takeaway, is try to focus on on-site deconstruction and sorting than just deconstructing and put it on a temporary storage. In terms of the market, so out of this 500,000 tons, we were able to produce 460,000 tons of valuable construction materials. This was, as you can see in the scheme down, aggregate type 1 and road construction material. Basically, what we do is the best concrete we try to process into aggregate type 1, and the less good material we go for the road construction. And we were able, and that was to a big surprise and quite good, we were able, under the technical equivalent standard, which is legislation of November 22, to certify this material in Ukraine and under EU standards, and we found in the commercial market construction companies in Kiev and in Mykolaiv that integrate this in the ready mix of their production. They use typically, I would say, 10 to 20% substitution on aggregate tape 1. Generally in France, we do 30-35%. So I think it's a good start. So that is on the economical viability. Where we come from as Neo Eco, so I explained that we do about 300 projects on C&D waste. But besides that, we have the first experience on debris waste was after the explosion in the port of Beirut in Lebanon. And we currently have a large project taking place in Turkey post-earthquake, where we are cleaning about 4 million tons of debris waste. And Matthew, who will join us around 4 o'clock Paris time, 5 o'clock Kiev time, he's the project manager for the Turkish project, and was also the project manager for the first project in Ukraine in Hostomel, and prior to that in Beirut. So he was physically there during all these activities. So I believe that he will give a lot of feedback. In terms of cost effectiveness, which Olena talked about as well, to be able to sell in a competitive way sorted debris on aggregate type 1 or road construction aggregates. There is currently only one region in Ukraine where you can do it on a competitive way, which is Kharkiv. Currently, aggregates in Kharkiv are very expensive. So for sure, in Kiev region, you could be cost neutral, more or less, if you have the volume. A little bit the same with Mykolaiv. But people should understand in the room that it really depends on the location where you operate in Ukraine and what is the price of a new aggregate from clean material or fresh material that you have to compare it to. Then in terms of recommendations, I think that there is a big challenge and a lot of, I would say, discussions ongoing. What is under a technical equivalent standard or a new standard that Ukraine needs to come up for debris management? What is the threshold for pollutants? And when I say pollutants, this is not only asbestos or chrome-6 or I would say the hazardous materials. But for example, if you want to use an aggregate type 1, you need to pay attention also to the content of PVC and the content of plasterworks. So since there is no international standard or any local standard available, of course, we use the technical equivalent standard in the Ukrainian context. But of course, once Ukraine moves further to try to reuse debris waste for the construction, either in aggregates, either in road construction, it would be important for the market, especially for the commercial players that would buy it, that there is a good understanding of what is acceptable thresholds of pollutants. Like Anna mentioned, we typically talk on asbestos, but if you take the example of asbestos, there is no single country in the European Union that has the same standard. Germany, where is a 0 ppm threshold. I would say in the majority of the EU countries, including the directive of the Commission, is 1 ppm threshold. But of course, you can imagine that for the authorities in Ukraine, when they speak to a GIZ person, the GIZ person will say you cannot use debris waste because it's a 0 ppm threshold. You speak to another donor, they say it's a 1 ppm threshold. So often international donors and organizations have different opinions, expert opinions. And then for the Ukrainian legislator, it is very difficult currently, I think, to understand what is feasible and not feasible. Also, I think that there is an exaggeration on asbestos compared to other pollutants in the waste. For example, in Irpin, we found a lot of buildings from the 90s and onwards with a lot of hexachrome 6 content in it, which basically was paint that within the EU that moved to Ukraine and being sold into Ukraine in those decade. And then the second thing is another discussion if you have, for example, 10,000 tons of processed materials, what is the sampling rate that you need to do? What is the sample size you need to do? And on what you need to test it? Because, of course, you could say you need to test each ton of material, but that would lead to a competitive disadvantage. If you only would take one sample on 10,000 tons, most probably it would not be enough to reassure the market. So these are, in my opinion, on top of other legislation in Ukraine, the two reasons why a lot of discussions are happening on it. And if you look to the current situation in Ukraine, and Olena mentioned that too, this JICA equipment, they are really giants, 500 tons per hour machines. I think they are too big for the need of Ukraine, but that's a personal opinion. I think we need 100, 200 tons per hour, and that would fit much better. Because to operate these big machines, it means that you need to feed them with about 10 to 15 trucks per hour, which is very unrealistic from an operational point of view. And secondly, as Olena mentioned too, currently these machines are primarily used just to crush the material, to downsize the material, but not to create an aggregate type 1 or a road construction aggregate. And if they go for the road construction aggregate, yeah, like Olena said, it's not to make better roads with a good underlayer. It's just to fill the holes in the road. And typically in the European context, this kind of aggregates are primarily used as a sublayer on which then you pool the asphalt or other materials. So in terms of recommendation, I think it would be good to have an agreement within Ukraine and all the donors on a threshold of the pollutants, and on which pollutants it needs to be checked, and what is the sampling size and the sampling rate that you need to do. But I still believe, and that's the good note with which I want to finish, I think the market is ready to absorb that material on the condition that they are assured that the technical quality of the material is equivalent to the material that they have. Otherwise, private sector will never take a risk, even if they can earn €1 per ton more. They will not take the risk to take material with less quality standards than the quality standards they currently have. So that is more or less, Anna, what I want to share. And on the chat, there is one thing I want to share on the chat. Of the slabs, a lot of people think that you can reuse slabs of this concrete slabs of a damaged building. I would absolutely not recommend this. We have done tests and stress tests and everything. It's far too dangerous because this building has been displaced under the attack at least for a couple of centimeters, if not a couple of meters, which means that the slabs were under extreme shear strength. And the chance that from the outside, the slabs look fine, but if you take them in detail, we see a lot of micro cracks in the slabs. So we absolutely don't recommend a bombed building to reuse the slabs. It's just madness to take that risk. And it's not worth doing it because these slabs are pretty cheap in Ukraine. There are very good professional producers on it. And I would rather recommend to take the slabs out, to crush it, to take the iron out of it, and to use the aggregate back to make those slabs rather than to just reuse the slabs. But that would be our recommendation. And also the last thing, for the other materials, which are not bricks and concrete, we found that Ukraine has a quite rich ecosystem for other recycling, which we did not think in 22 would be easy. But for example, PVC, there are a couple of good PVC recyclers in Ukraine that are doing pretty good standard work. Asbestos landfilling, of course, is still challenging in Ukraine, but not only in Ukraine, that's everywhere a challenge. But I would say that I don't see from a technical point of view a lot of obstacles to do circular economy in Ukraine. Financially, we spoke about it. Technically, we spoke about it. And it's more a will to push the boundary of what is easy to do. It's much easier to just tear a building down, crush it, and put it in landfill. That's the easiest one. But I think the quantity of debris in Ukraine is just too high to just landfill it. And we should not forget that landfilling will lead to another problem in Ukraine, that Ukraine is lacking already landfill capacity. The current landfill capacity in Ukraine is, I would say, still post-Soviet heritage, which means that there is no leaching of the landfill, there is no containment of it, which means that the current landfill in Ukraine comes at a cost, I would say, on average €1 per ton. And the new landfills that needs to be constructed at European standard would come at least at 10, 12 euros per ton in terms of facility to accommodate. So we need to make sure that we just don't fill all the existing landfill just with this kind of good products, because again, like Olena showed as well, 85 to 90% is bricks and concrete. you can easily sort separately and recycle.
And as you mentioned, we should be talking also not about waste, but about material that could be reused, right, in the first place, to change the mindset a little bit. Just to have this opportunity before we switch to questions, while Bart and Elena both are here. A quick question with maybe quick thoughts from your side about you named so many challenges, of course, and this is what you're facing again on an everyday basis. What are the key opportunities for international cooperation do you see at this moment? Perhaps main kind of just few points on this.
Since I need to leave at 4 o'clock, if that is okay, Olena, I would like to answer first and I need to leave. But I think the key thing is that each national country should stop pushing their own standards into Ukraine. That would be my first recommendation. So my first recommendation would be that each country should stop pushing their own standards to the Ukrainian national legislator. I think it would be better if these different countries come to a common standard with Ukraine, because currently each country is pushing its own standards and norms, and I think it's not wise. And often these norms and standards, they are coming from C&D waste and not debris waste. And a lot of experts or so-called experts that are coming to Ukraine are coming from the C&D. Things they can extrapolate C&D waste programs to Ukraine. And this is absolutely not true. C&D waste and debris waste are two different topics, two different methodologies, and there needs to be more pragmatism. That would be my recommendation, because there are a lot of so-called experts, but when it comes to debris, we see that very few have practical experience, and I would say an approach that is practically implementable in Ukraine, because of course you could create a perfect situation of a pure material and everything, but instead of 15 billion, that could be and come 100 billion or whatsoever. So it's not realistic. So we need to come up with a standard that is practically, economically, and environmentally proven. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you so much. So keeping in mind Ukrainian reality and context, which is not necessarily equal to other countries' context, of course. Bart, so thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your contributions. If there is anything, other questions to you, we will forward them to you.
Yeah, but Matthew is here, and
event.
Matthew has a lot of practical experience, so I'm happy that Matthew is taking over from my side here. Bye-bye.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Thank
See
you. So the same question now to Olena about what are the key topics, opportunities for cooperation you see at the moment.
Actually, I agree with Bart, but still we need good experience to develop new building materials with recycled materials inside, at least in some percent, because we do not have such practice in Ukrainian market. And actually, to not develop new bicycle, we need to take at least some things that work all around Europe or in other countries, and try to understand how to reach this quality of the materials to then develop this recycle building construction materials with recycled materials inside. So actually, a good experience, and even actually. You know, in the beginning of the war, we always talk this phrase that debris is not C&D. It's different. We need to have special condition on that. But actually, all the equipment that already in Ukraine is for C&D waste. And of course, debris is much more complicated question, how to separate it, how to take out hazardous. But actually, when you are demolishing buildings in C&D, when you work with C&D, one of approach to demolishing building is to crush it. So it also will be everything mixed inside. So, and what we are trying to do right now in Ukraine to study all the practice with C&D, with some destruction waste management all around the world, because we have a lot of fires all around Europe. We have a lot of floods all around the world, and different regions, different countries have their own regulation. So we are trying to study all of that cases and bring to Ukraine reality such cases that could work in our condition, could work with our kind of waste. waste, because as I saw example of methodology of counting the waste, we take general approach from Japan methodology, which is the easiest and the most like useful methodology all around the world. But actually we count our own coefficient due to Ukrainian type of building, because in Japan you usually have concrete and wood building. In Ukrainian we have bricks, we have like panels that was produced very quickly all around the Soviet Union. So it's a little we have a little specific on our types of building, different from European one.
Right, and I see actually quite a few messages in the chat from different research institutions and EU projects that are working on the topic, and perhaps they are the ones who could look into that too, because I think your suggestion, what we should be looking at is the developing new building materials with recycled materials that we are still learning, and also perhaps that is bound to finally defining the standards for reconstruction, because for the moment on the national level Ukraine has not really defined, although we could have set certain limits but also criteria what actually we want to build, and we could also imagine as the reconstruction standard with recycled materials too that we could reuse. So we don't have that at the moment. However, there is definitely something to research, explore. And yeah, you see Olena is doing this, so do I'm directing you to her now, trying to catch some questions from the chat. There were quite a few. There was one that is I think it's a bit general, but we can tell a few more things about the situation also based on it. So the question goes like this: what challenges do you see in scaling up sustainable practices across regions that have different levels of damage and different levels of capacity? And I guess this also goes to the, what Bart explained, that depending on the region, the situation is already very different. So how would you answer this question? How to scale up sustainable practices within regions?
I think what is important for understanding, because we start this research with international regulation, and we made a lot of regulation on regional level in different countries. We do not have such regulation, so only environmental protection regulation and rules on the waste, they are general for all around Ukraine. So the same rules in different regions where you come. The main problem, as for me, is money, because usually community do not have money to pay on managing this waste. And actually what the kind of international expert come into Ukraine and say, okay, they do not have money, but it is very expensive to landfill it in Ukraine. No, it's not expensive to landfill in Ukraine. Actually, we are fighting for this all over 10 years to raise the tax on landfilling in Ukraine, because it's very low. It's less than half a cent. So it's around 2 and 5 cents, as I remember. A cent, I mean euros, cent euros. So it's very low. It's extremely low. That's why it's one of the economical issues why waste management, not only C&D, but waste management, even solid waste management, doesn't work in Ukraine correctly. So this is a question to government, to all stakeholders, to develop this system, and then it will work also in the region. So the system will be the same in all around Ukraine.
Right. So now moving to one more question. We partially answered that, but maybe you have something to add. Is there, and this is a question to both of you, of course, and Matthew, if you want to also add up on international experience and how that you have. It is about Ukraine again, but I'm sure there is something to share. So, is there capacity and technology in place to recycle debris materials? Or this is exactly the question of possible cooperation. So here it's about the capacity and technology. So we already mentioned that it depends on type of material, where there is some capacity, somewhere there is not. But also the question goes how to actually develop this capacity properly, with international support or without, but hopefully with.
maybe you can share one experience. As you say, Anna, I worked 2 years ago in Ostomel, near to Kiev region, and we have a pilot. So it was with a financial donor and a French government. But about the technologies, we discovered that there is a lots of machinery and equipment, especially crushing machine from the mines, and mines are stopped during the war. And so we bring one of these big machinery to crush aggregates from it was 7 building and produce, I don't know, it was 20,000 tons of aggregates. So about the technology, I think all the equipment required to do circular economy are in place in Ukraine. It's only logistic to load the equipment, place it at the right place. It's processing 2 or 3 weeks and can go to another city or another work site. And yeah, laboratory and concrete and road industry are in place. So everybody know how to work with aggregates, how to implement these materials. So for me, the lever, it's more how to do it without international financial donor, how to do it with the own resource now and also after the war.
I will a little bit argue with that, because actually we have a lot of not a lot, but we have examples on the market when some pilot project try to have recycled materials in the end of the proceeding, and they give samples to concrete producers, and the concrete producer couldn't make a concrete with these recycled materials because they was very mixed with different kind of waste inside. So there is wood, some other materials inside, so they very influence on the quality of the end materials that could use in the concrete. So as for me, the main challenge for us to build clear, understandable process from the beginning of the sorting this waste, of choosing the building, because as we discussed with a lot of international international partners and experts, that for example CND, why I'm talking about CND, because it's already systems that they work all around the world. Of course we have much more big challenges with our ways in CND, but still, even if you work with CND, you are choosing what kind of buildings you are mixed in a recycling process together to have in the end good quality aggregates or sand to use in concrete, for example. Yes, but the main problem of us right now, that we are bringing on the side all kind of ways that we have from the building, and we're not choosing that we should recycle these and these materials together to have in the end good quality materials to recycle. And this is the main challenges to us, as for me, as a waste management expert and the person that trying to also bring some solution for national levels, to build correct system, how you are taking the waste from a site where during demolition processes, bringing it to temporary site, recycling in which way, and how you're controlling quality of these materials, because we have a lot of conversation with concrete markets. They do not have such opportunity to have a lot of people to control the materials on their producing site. So they need to have quality materials when they are buying it. So, and responsibility to share this, they need to share this responsibility with this, let's call it recycling plant, that will crushing this concrete or other materials. It's, Bart mentioned really one more big challenge, that very good equipment are right now in communities. So some communities have very good equipment, and we need to build to them this system, then to work with, so they could work with the business, because to not use this very expensive good equipment in the region, it will be foolish from our side solve this problem. Maybe when we will build this system in Ukraine and we will have a C&D market, not only debris in Ukraine, there will be opportunity to bring much more business. But actually, if someone who can bring technology, equipment, and the knowledge how to build correctly the system to take mixed or contaminated materials to check its quality and have in the end quality recycled materials to use, it'd be very helpful for all of us, I think.
Thanks. So this is one more important area for cooperation, I guess, the quality checks in the labs and so on. There is a short, not short, but there is another question about the regulations on recycled concrete. So if we are talking about recycled concrete, what is the percentage of recycled gravel in the composition? And are there any regulations that control the composition? So what is, I guess this is actually a good question about, generally speaking, the circular economy regulations in Ukraine, and what is actually in place that you can actually use practically now already, and what is not there yet.
As I remember, 2 years ago, it was not precise. So it's not zero, it's not right, and it's forbidden to use recycled aggregates, but it's not precise how much. And so that's a good question. How much? Is it the technical maximum? Or is there any standards? For comparison, in Europe, before it was 30%, but since 1 year, it's up to 40% of recycled materials inside a meter cube of concrete, 40%. Yeah, and with the science in a laboratory, with small crushing and making some sample and formulation. So formulation, it's a recipient for concrete. We make different percentage, and we discover that it's possible to make a very good concrete with all standards with 100%. I think people who construct building, contractor, etc., don't want to take the risk, and I understand why, because if the aggregates have a low quality with 100%, your concrete will be bad. But if the aggregates have good quality, it's exactly the same thing as virgin materials, and it could even be better for technical aspect like water and cement ratio or something like this. There is more porosity in recycled materials. So I think the guidelines it's between 20 and 40%. That's very easy to integrate if it's a good quality aggregate. It doesn't change how to make the concrete, how to set up the concrete. And even if the quality is a little bit lower, it doesn't change the performance of the concrete. If you want to go upper, you need to make a very strong scientific level analyze and formulation to test, to make a sample, crush it, etc. But yeah, less than 40%. It's very easy to integrate a fraction of recycled aggregates.
And we have a very good question that is running up on that one, I think, in general, about the budget. So is the use of recycling materials reducing the cost of construction budget? So the full question goes as following: taking into account the available research and recycling of construction debris and its use, can we say that the recycling of materials reduces the cost of construction budget? Even by 20-30%, I guess, but in general, I guess at least does it reduce? Also including take into consideration the reduction of carbon footprint. I'm afraid the carbon footprint considerations are not there in Ukraine yet. At least we may add them soon. But what do you say? Do you have to say about this?
About price, of course, it depends what is the site. If we produce aggregates on a building and we rebuild in the same place, we avoid to move a big mass of and volume of aggregates. So it's, of course, we will earn money. For virgin materials, as it's very heavy, the main part of the cost is transportation cost, and that's the same for CO2 emission. So if the loops it's closer, we will earn money and also CO2 emission. If we recycle aggregates in Mykolaiv and use it in Kiev, it's a nonsense. And so, yeah, the goal of circular economy is to be very local. So if materials are crushed and after new concrete is implemented in, I don't know, a round of 20 kilometers, it's cheaper than virgin aggregates.
If perhaps Lana has a few words to add on that, because I keep thinking about the current construction industry, and do they use the recycled materials? Perhaps if they don't use it yet, then it means that there is something wrong with the economic model.
So we just ask some prices. Actually, the price of the sand fraction in Ukraine is around 7-9 euros per ton. So as I know, in comparison with European market, is much more or even half cheaper than in Europe. So it's why in Ukraine and the aggregates is even more cheaper. So in Ukraine, it's hard to talk right now about like economic issues of using recycled materials, but still we are on the developing phase, on transition phase of our waste management in Ukraine. And one of the things that I think will influence on the market price of virgin materials that we need to implement in Ukraine extractive waste directive of due to association with European Union that will bring new permits in ecological and new control in the environmental protection sphere. So it could influence the prices of virgin materials, and then it will be more even interesting. Also, that I already mentioned, gate fee. So if we will have a higher gate fee on landfilling, then they will count also in the price, economic price of new buildings that you need to demolish some building to pay a landfill gate fee. So in the end, it's more economical viable to use it like materials, but not to send into the landfill. So we just need to not watch only on one stream. So we have some material, we crush it and use it. So it's a very complicated system to build this economic interest in this sphere. And also in the our already approved waste management law, we have a possibility for the ministry to push this sector to set some percent that the construction company should use of recycled materials in new buildings. And if you are talking about, let's call it great recovery process, if we will start in the very destroyed region, there could be really economic model in this process, because first one, we could have a supply shortage. So there will be a material, as Matthew said, on the site. So in the local geography, to bring it on the construction site. And actually, because of like introducing some stimulation from the government to bring recycled materials on the market.
Thank you so much.
I very hope, because I'm not already government, so I very hope that they will do that in one time.
A quick yes or no question before I hand it over back to Marta, to actually still have time for a little bit of networking, unless you think we should continue with questions, because there's still some. But a quick yes and no question: do you face the need to demine the ruins? Do you need to demine the ruins? So I guess the debris
Yes.
that you're managing
Yes.
with. Yes.
Even in temporary sites, there is like a situation when they find something to demine.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Ukraine is now definitely most mined country in Europe, and maybe even in the world. So unfortunately, this is another huge issue. Well, However, we discussed a lot about cooperation. This is great, and thank you so much for that. So, Marta, what would you say? I'm handing
I would
that back to
say
you.
that we can discuss few questions more, 5-6 minutes, because I see that we do really have a lively discussion, and maybe we can organize a following event to to have a little bit more network. And now, if you do have questions in the chat, I would say that we can discuss them and use this opportunity to have Matthew and Olena with us.
Sure. Then I continue for a bit more. Could you, I guess there's a question to Olena, who mentioned 1073, the resolution, the regulation. Could you please comment on the reasons for inclusion of asbestos-containing waste to the list for possible reuse in this resolution? Sorry, we don't hear you. You're muted.
Yes,
Yeah.
I saw this question. I think it's because problem with translation, because in the resolution there are three kind of terminologies that have some kind of sense. Reuse. It's reuse, recovery, disposal, and treatment. So if you are talking with asbestos, we need to mention it because there are like a separate regulation. How do you work when you have like chance of contaminating by asbestos? So in resolution, I'm for sure this talking about terminology treatment or disposal. So treatment is both recovery and disposal is only like disposal. Yes. So yeah, I think it's about the problem with translation. We know that it's fully impossible. There is code in this, so sorry.
Now I'm muted. Thank you for this. Now there's a question, and this is actually very interesting. We mentioned, of course, what you do, what NeoEcho is doing, and there is many other pilots too, which are happening in parallel. The question is to Ukraine, but also, I guess, to the cooperation in the world. So are there collaborations with other countries that have successfully rebuilt sustainably after conflict or disaster? And maybe that goes to perhaps some already successful pilots in Ukraine that you could actually tell a few words about. But also, Matthew, if you know good cases from worldwide, where I can imagine we cannot be talking about super sustainable reconstruction because it probably doesn't exist yet. But however, if you could name a few examples that could be useful for our discussion, that would be also great.
As for me, Japan, because they already bring a lot of knowledge from Japan and Ukraine, equipment, etc. And they really have a good, like some methodology approach. So we could take something from that, not fully, but at least some good approach. Also, we are looking for even for some experience from Second World War, because we know a lot of examples. There is that they use recycled materials in new buildings, even in that times with that technology. But it wasn't in this like volume. We are looking also for Israeli practice, because they could have some that haven't studied before. And actually, before introducing the resolution, we look at the practice of current Croatia, Bosnia Herzegovina, so Montenegro, how they solve the problem after their war. So actually, right now in this deep research, we are planning to study deeply even very similar for debris type of waste, like waste from destruction, from natural destruction. So maybe there is good like some approaches that we could take to Ukrainian practice.
Yeah, maybe I can say something about Turkey, and I think main post-catastrophe events where we are debris. We are thinking on very good recycling process that work very well to separate the different kind of waste and recycling maximum rates like 90% sometimes. But the big issue most of the time it's what to do with this recycled product because there is no needs on the market, and it's a part of the job is to design and process the waste, but the other part is to make prescriptions. So to work with the Lord owner, to work with financial institutions that are making prescriptions for the reconstruction, and to integrate in the construction company tenders that you should use 10% of recycled materials, etc. And for the, I think the big result for a project is to connect the both. So produce recycled materials, but also authorize and encourage to use a part of recycled materials. And by combining the both, local players are changing the business model, are thinking more on alternative and also green way of working. And the process, it's working in the both side.
Authorize and encourage.
Yeah.
That's encouraging, but that's exactly what we still should do, at least on the encourage side, also to in Ukraine. A few minutes left. I definitely have to hand over to Marta because she still has something to tell everyone. But thank you so much for this great discussion. And I think it was a lot. However, we will try to summarize it too, and put that text in on the platform website.
Thank you a lot. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Alana and Matthew and all participants. It was really very interesting, and I saw many a lot of information in the chat. I will definitely go once more through it and summarize it all. Thank you for this information. We do also have there links to researchers and to companies which are dealing with the topic. And as I said a few minutes ago, we could organize a following event regarding this topic, as we see that you are very interested in it. Selina, maybe I would like to ask you to share. Thank you a lot. But before we wrap up our event, I would like to announce few things, upcoming events in our platform for April. On the 10th of April, we will have an online event to mental health. And then at the end of April, we will have also online follow-up event after Global Disability Summit, which is in Berlin in present on the 2nd and 3rd of April. And all details you will find in our internet site. We would be very happy to receive also feedback from you, so we can organize a further event. And if you would like to attend to networking event, please also write a sentence in this feedback. Thank you all for attending this event, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much again.